Useless. That was the word my boss, Daniel Cross, spat across the conference table like poison. The word that made everyone in the room stop typing, breathing, pretending. I'd heard worse things whispered about me in corporate hallways before, lazy, timid, invisible, but never from Daniel's mouth. Never in front of the entire marketing department. I remember standing there with my report in hand, trembling just enough that the stack of papers tapped softly against each other. I'd spent 3 nights polishing that quarterly proposal, only for him to tear it apart in less than a minute. 4 years, he sneered, pacing like a wolf in an expensive suit. 4 years on my team, and this is what you come up with? You're useless, Mia. Laughter rippled from the corner where the interns sat, nervous, hollow laughs that tried to please him. I swallowed hard. I can fix it, Daniel. If you just tell me what. He cut me off with a wave. Don't bother. I'll have someone competent handle it. That was Daniel Cross, the man who made me believe hard work was a weakness. He was the kind of boss who smiled during HR meetings, called everyone team, and then gutted you with his words the moment you slipped. Still, I had once admired him. His confidence. His authority. His knack for making clients swoon with buzzwords and promises. For years, I tried to learn from him, thinking that if I worked hard enough, he'd see me, appreciate me, maybe even mentor me. But that day, the day he called me useless, something inside me cracked. After the meeting, I sat at my desk, my hands frozen above the keyboard. Around me, the office buzzed with forced normalcy, clicking keys, fake laughs, ringing phones. I could feel eyes glancing my way, sympathy mixed with relief that it wasn't them this time. When Daniel's door closed behind him, I exhaled. I opened my inbox to distract myself. Hundreds of unread messages, half of them marked urgent. And that's when I saw it. An email sitting in my drafts folder. One that I hadn't written. It was from Daniel's account. Addressed to someone high up in corporate. The subject line read, about the missing client funds, urgent. My heart skipped. The timestamp was from last night. But the signature, the phrasing, something felt off. I hovered my mouse over the forward button, pulse quickening. For the first time that day, Daniel's words echoed again in my head, useless. Maybe, but not for long. And as I hit open, a faint, chilling realization settled over me. Whatever was in that email, Daniel had never meant for anyone else to see. When I opened that draft, I told myself it had to be some kind of mistake, a glitch, maybe. But the more I read, the stranger it got. Daniel had written to Elaine Wu, our regional director. The message was short, almost panicked. I've taken care of the discrepancy for now. Don't let finance dig deeper. We can smooth it out before the next audit. It was signed with his usual flair, best, D. But the tone wasn't like him. It wasn't confident or charming. It was desperate. I should have closed it. Deleted it. Pretended I'd never seen it. But once you glimpse the dirt beneath the surface, it's impossible to unsee it. That night, I stayed late under the dull hum of fluorescent lights. The office was empty except for Daniel's glass-walled office glowing across the hall. I could see his silhouette pacing, phone pressed to his ear. He was talking fast, low, but not low enough. No, they won't find out, he hissed. I'll handle Mia. She's predictable. My stomach tightened. Handle me. When he stepped out moments later, he jumped a little seeing me still there. Burning the midnight oil, her, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I forced a laugh. Just catching up. He patted my shoulder. Good girl. You're finally learning. That phrase, good girl, should have been my second red flag. It wasn't mentorship anymore. It was control. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's mask began to slip. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. He'd shower praise on the interns he flirted with, but tear down anyone who questioned him. He'd make promises, bonuses, promotions, recognition, that evaporated when you tried to follow up. And the company credit card bills? They were getting flagged more and more. Client dinners, he called them. But I'd seen one of those clients, a woman from another department, laughing with him over champagne on a Wednesday afternoon. Then came the missing files. Reports vanished from shared drives. Emails got lost. Daniel would blame me every time. "Mia, how many times do I have to tell you to stay organized?" Each word chipped away at my confidence. I started triple-checking everything, terrified of making mistakes. My sleep was wrecked. I'd wake up replaying every meeting, every sharp tone, every smirk. But what haunted me most was that draft. I never told anyone I'd seen it, but it sat in my inbox like a secret I couldn't delete. Sometimes, when Daniel brushed past my desk, he'd glance at my monitor just a second too long. It felt like he knew. And though I didn't realize it then, that was when the game between us truly began. The breaking point came on a Thursday morning, one of those dull, grey days where the coffee tastes burnt and the air feels heavy with bad news. Daniel had called an urgent team sync. Everyone filed into the glass conference room, whispering, guessing what it might be about. I sat near the end of the table, clutching my notebook like armor. Daniel strolled in 10 minutes late, wearing that smug half-smile that meant he'd already decided how the meeting would end. "I'll make this quick," he said, clicking his tablet. A sleek presentation lit up the screen. Project Aurora, New Client Acquisition Strategy. My stomach dropped. I knew that title. I'd written that proposal. Word for word. Slide for slide. Except this version had Daniel's name plastered across every page, created and presented by Daniel Cross. He stood there, explaining my work like it was his masterpiece. My research, my copy, my designs. Even the tagline I'd spent hours perfecting. The others nodded, impressed. HR smiled. Elaine from corporate joined on video call, beaming. "Brilliant work, Daniel," she said. "This could save the company after that unfortunate discrepancy last quarter." Daniel chuckled modestly. "Just doing my job." I couldn't breathe. When the meeting ended, people clapped. He gave me a wink on the way out, as if daring me to speak. I didn't. Not yet. But my hands shook as I packed my things. I went back to my desk, shut my laptop, and stared at the draft email still sitting there. The one about missing client funds. The puzzle pieces finally started fitting together. The discrepancy Elaine had mentioned. The secret calls. The expensive client dinners. And now, taking credit for my project, because he needed a win to cover his own mess. He wasn't just arrogant. He was covering up fraud. And I was the perfect scapegoat. The useless employee no one would believe if things went wrong. That realization hit like ice water. My cheeks burned, my chest ached, and something deep inside me hardened. Years of swallowing humiliation, of apologizing for things that weren't my fault. It all erupted in one silent vow, no more. I opened Daniel's email draft again. The one he'd left behind by mistake. I reread every word until I was sure of what I'd seen. Then I checked the timestamps, the attached documents, the forwarding chain. He'd been moving company funds between client accounts under fake reimbursement names. He thought I'd stay quiet. But he was wrong. I hovered my cursor over the forward button, this time, not by accident. And though my hands were trembling, my mind had never been clearer. I didn't press forward right away. My finger hovered over the trackpad, heart pounding so loud I could hear it echo in my ears. It would have been so easy, one click, and the email would be out of my hands forever. But fear has a way of freezing even the strongest intentions. What if I was wrong? What if this backfired? What if he found out? Because Daniel always found out. That night, I stayed late again. The office was quiet except for the hum of the vending machine and the faint tapping of rain against the windows. My reflection stared back at me from my monitor. Tired eyes, slumped shoulders, the face of someone who'd been small for too long. I thought about all the times Daniel had humiliated me. The useless speech. The stolen project. The way he looked right through me when I spoke, like I was furniture that occasionally made noise. And suddenly, I remembered something my dad used to say before he passed. If you let someone write your story, don't be surprised when you don't like the ending. That hit hard. Because somewhere along the way, I had stopped writing mine. So I opened a blank document and started typing. Not an email. Not a report. Just the truth. Every insult, every manipulation, every shady thing I'd seen or heard. I attached screenshots, files, and notes from months of work, everything I'd been too afraid to connect until now. The more I wrote, the steadier my hands became. For the first time, I wasn't writing for Daniel. I was writing for me. By the time I finished, it was past midnight. My cursor blinked beside the draft email from his account, the one that could destroy him. I took a deep breath, selected my compiled file, and attached it. Then I looked at the to field and typed one word: compliance. I wasn't just forwarding an email anymore. I was forwarding years of silence, of being overlooked, of being called useless. And right before I hit send, I whispered to the empty office, "Let's see who's useless now." The message sent with a soft whoosh. For a moment, everything was still. Then the rain outside grew heavier, the lights flickered, and the hum of the computers sounded almost alive, like the office itself was exhaling with me. I packed my bag and left without looking back. As the elevator doors closed, my phone buzzed. A new email notification popped up. From Daniel Cross. Subject: we need to talk. Now. A chill ran down my spine. He knew. But this time, I wasn't scared. I was ready. I didn't celebrate when compliance answered back, just a short, professional reply: "We received your submission. We will investigate." That silence after the whoosh was 1,000 tiny thumps in my chest. It told me they were looking. But it didn't tell me whether I'd survive the fallout. I realized then that sending the email was only the first play. If I wanted Daniel's career to end, and for the record to be set straight, I needed a plan that couldn't be ignored, bent, or buried. So I built one, careful and ugly and precise. I started with what I already had: the draft from Daniel's account, timestamps, and the ledger screenshots. Then I dug deeper. I copied every client invoice that had been rerouted, pulled calendar invites showing his client dinners, and exported Slack threads where he'd pressured interns to delete files. I saved metadata, not just screenshots, the digital skeleton that proves ownership and timing. I duplicated everything to an encrypted drive I kept in my bag. If one copy vanished, I'd still have 3 An accusation is weakness without witnesses. I quietly messaged 2 colleagues who'd been nearest to the discrepancies: Elena from finance and Jonah from IT. I didn't tell them everything. I asked one targeted question at a time, watching for micro-reactions. Elena admitted she'd noticed odd reimbursements. Jonah said he'd seen unauthorized transfers flagged by the system. They didn't know I had Daniel's draft, but their nervous affirmations stitched my paper trail to reality. Daniel still smelled of power in the office. He walked like the floor belonged to him. If I shoved the evidence into the machine all at once, he'd use his charm and connections to spin it. So I started a slow bleed, a harmless question to Elaine about audit timelines, a casual mention to HR that I'd noticed inconsistencies, a forwarded innocuous invoice to compliance with a note asking for confirmation on procedure. Each small nudge ensured multiple departments began looking without knowing why. The bureaucracy would do the rest. I drafted an internal memo, neutral, fact-based, that compiled the cleanest, most damning evidence: transfers, timestamps, Daniel's own phrasing in that draft, and parallel versions of my stolen presentation. I scheduled delivery to compliance, legal, and Elaine simultaneously. No single person could bury all 3 all the while. Daniel acted like a man untroubled. He took credit for my work at a client lunch, laughed off a pointed question from Elaine, and whispered threats in the hallway that made my skin crawl. He continued to parade victories and to pounce on anyone who looked vulnerable. He still had the optics. On the Friday before the audit review, he asked me to stay after hours. "Just a quick chat," he said, smiling that practice smile. He thought he was confronting a scared, broken employee. He didn't know I'd already built a room full of witnesses, backups, and legal-sounding memos ready to drop like concrete. As I sat across from him, heart steady but hands unclenched inside my jacket, I watched the man who'd called me useless arrange his own curtain. The trap was set. The only question left was whether he'd fall into it. The moment felt almost cinematic. Daniel leaning back in his leather chair, smirking like the villain in a movie who thinks he's already won. "So," he said, lacing his fingers, "I hear you've been poking around." His tone was light, but the veins in his temple told a different story. I don't know what you mean, I said evenly, though my voice trembled just enough to keep up the act. He stood, walking around the desk until he was beside me. You've always been a bright one, Mia. But curiosity kills careers. You don't want to make a mistake you'll regret. I met his gaze. You mean like yours? That made him blink. Just once. He opened his mouth to respond, but then his phone buzzed. A rapid vibration, followed by another, and another. He frowned, checking the screen. His face shifted from irritation to confusion, then to dread. Because every phone in the office had started buzzing too. Outside his glass wall, people were standing up, whispering, screens lighting up with the same company-wide notification. Urgent notice. Financial misconduct under investigation. Statement from compliance department incoming. Daniel's eyes snapped to mine. What did you do? I rose slowly. You said I was useless, remember? I just forwarded an email. The color drained from his face. I watched him swipe frantically through his inbox, opening message after message, the same one sent to every senior executive, board member, and department head. The email. His email. The one about the missing client funds. Only this time, it wasn't just the draft. It included the attachments, the account transfers, the reimbursements, my presentation he'd stolen, all timestamped, verified, and copied directly from his account. Compliance had finished their investigation faster than even I expected. They didn't wait for a quiet report. They'd gone public, an internal announcement first, but with legal authorities CC'd. It spread through the company like fire on dry paper. Daniel's phone rang. He didn't answer. Then it rang again. HR, legal. Then finally Elaine's name flashed across the screen. He silenced it with a trembling hand. You set me up, he whispered, voice breaking. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up. I just hit send. Outside, people had stopped pretending to work. They were watching him, the man who'd called everyone else incompetent, now unraveling under fluorescent lights. Security arrived 20 minutes later. He tried to talk his way out of it, of course. He always did. But when they asked him to hand over his keycard and laptop, even his voice began to falter. As they led him out through the lobby, his reflection passed over the glass doors, once powerful, now small. For the first time in 4 years, the office was silent. And then, a single, almost hesitant sound. Applause. I didn't join in. I just watched, calm and still, as Daniel Cross walked out of the company he thought he owned. Useless, huh? Funny how one little email could end an empire. It's strange how quiet justice sounds. No fireworks. No slow-motion applause. Just silence, the kind that settles after a storm, when everything broken finally lies still. Daniel Cross's name was everywhere the next morning. Executive under investigation for fraud. Marketing director fired amid financial scandal. The kind of headlines that strip away every ounce of power from a man who once strutted through the office like a king. By noon, his LinkedIn page vanished. By evening, the company issued an official statement. Internal misconduct confirmed. Appropriate legal action pending. The same people who once laughed at his jokes now pretended not to know him. That's the thing about people like Daniel. Their power depends on the illusion that no one can touch them. Once that illusion cracks, they disappear faster than a deleted email. As for me, HR called me in that Monday. I half expected to be blamed, or at least questioned. But instead, Elaine from corporate was there, calm, deliberate. Mia, she said, we owe you an apology. Turns out, the forwarded email didn't just end Daniel's career. It saved the company millions, funds he'd been funneling into fake vendors under false names. My name had appeared in a few of those reports, too, not as an accomplice, but as the employee he'd planned to frame when the audit hit. If I hadn't acted, I would have been the one escorted out in disgrace. Elaine offered me Daniel's position. I didn't accept, not right away. I needed time. Healing doesn't happen in the same place you were broken. But the offer itself was enough. Proof that being quiet didn't mean being powerless. Weeks passed. The office felt lighter. People smiled again. The new leadership cleaned house, replaced the toxic cheerfulness with real collaboration. And when I finally walked into that corner office for the first time, not as an assistant, not as a scapegoat, but as someone who mattered, I smiled. On Daniel's old desk sat a brass nameplate. I turned it over, the back still engraved with D cross. Then I slid it into a drawer and whispered, "Guess who's useless now?" Poetic justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it just whispers, one small act echoing louder than years of cruelty. To anyone watching this who's ever been underestimated, silenced, or called useless, remember this, the quiet ones aren't weak. We're just waiting for the right moment to press send. Have you ever faced someone like Daniel, a boss, friend, or partner who made you feel small? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more stories where karma writes the ending, hit subscribe, because the next revenge tale might just be your favorite kind of justice. Fire, he called me useless. I called him finished.